Okay, I didn't think vinyl records were this complex, but the research for this video took me down historical and physics rabbit holes I really didn't expect. Here's how vinyl records work. We start our story with Thomas Edison, who had this little idea to attach a needle to a telephone receiver. The idea is that the needle could sketch an impression of sound onto moving paper, thereby recording the sound. After this, he developed a way to record the sound waves so that they could be converted back into sound using a second needle. This resulted in the invention of the phonograph in 1877, the earliest machine for recording and playing sound. The phonograph consisted of a cylinder lined with tin foil and hand cranks on the sides. There was a mouthpiece attached to one side of the cylinder that was attached to a very thin membrane or diaphragm that was attached to a needle. An operator would yell into the mouthpiece while manually turning the crank. The yelling would cause the membrane and needle to vibrate and etch a recording onto the tinfoil. On the other side, there was a second needle and amplifier. When the crank was reset, the second needle would follow the grooves that had been etched, thereby reproducing the original sound vibrations, which were then amplified to be audible. If your mind is having trouble processing how tiny needle vibrations can create sound, yeah, it's kind of weird to think about, but sound really is just vibrations. The vibration is the sound. All of this is 100% analog technology, no electricity involved. Edison's phonograph was really cool, but it was difficult for most people to use, and recordings on tinfoil were not particularly durable, so the machine wasn't very practical. It's also worth noting that even before Edison's phonograph in 1877, people were already playing with the idea of recording sound. Edison wasn't really the first. I digress. 10 years after, in 1887, Emil Berliner built on the phonograph to produce a gramophone. The gramophone, unlike its predecessor, could not record sound. It was purely a playback machine, and was a lot better at this than the phonograph. It also looks a lot more similar to our modern-day record player. The device actually rotated a disc on a flat plate, although this rotation was still driven by the turn of a crank. Discs back then were made of shellac, which is a resin that's secreted by an insect. Berliner worked with another inventor by the name of Elridge Johnson to mass-produce gramophones and their accompanying discs, giving the public access to music. Modern vinyl records are, well, made of vinyl now instead of insect secretions, but the fundamental science that underlies how they work is remarkably similar to what we were doing in the late 1800s. In the recording process, the electrical recording of modern music provides instructions that tell a needle how to vibrate. As the needle vibrates, it etches a vinyl record on a turntable to make the master copy. That master copy is then used through a series of steps to make what's called a stamper, which is just a negative version of the original recording. Then that stamper is used to push an impression of the master recording onto some vinyl, and that's how we get vinyl records. Now that we have a vinyl record, we put this record on our modern-day record player. The needle, or the stylus, of the record player is placed into the grooves of the record. As the record spins, the stylus follows the grooves and vibrates. The vibrations are turned back into an electrical signal and come out of speakers. The only extra wrinkle is, we don't live in the analog world of the late 1800s anymore. How are electrical signals converted into physical sound waves, and vice versa? Enter Faraday's laws of induction, which explain how we can turn mechanical energy into electrical energy. Faraday's first law states that a change in magnetic field can create an electromotive force and induce a current in a conducting coil. Faraday's second law states that the magnitude of this force and current is proportional to how fast the magnetic field is changing. The stylus of the record player is attached to a magnet, which is next to a coil. This is all housed in the cartridge. When the stylus vibrates along the record grooves, it moves the attached magnet, which changes the magnetic field around the coil, thus generating an electromotive force and current. The magnitude of this current and force is proportional to how fast the magnetic field is changing, which reflects how fast the stylus is vibrating. This current is then sent to the speakers. A speaker, at its base, is composed of a cone attached to a coil that's wrapped around a fixed magnet. When you feed current into the coil, you create a magnetic field and turn the coil into an electromagnet, the strength of which depends on the magnitude of the current running through the coil. This is described by Ampere's law. The interaction between the electromagnet and the original magnet causes the coil to move back and forth, thereby causing the attached cone to move back and forth as well. This movement of the cone generates a sound wave, and you can actually make a speaker at home like this. This is how the electrical signal is translated back into a physical sound wave that we can then listen to and enjoy. And that's how vinyl records work.